clubs, we start projects, we advocate for ourselves and for our fellow students. We have watched the most documented genocide in history play out and have watched our international friends be targeted and disappeared, have watched a countrywide assault on free speech, and higher education, and have been pushed to action by the social justice education we have received, and by deep fear for our friends, our community, our world. You want to believe we are the exception, that we are a few ill-intentioned troublemakers instigating disruption across campus out of malice, but that is just not true. We are what makes Barnard, and you have chosen to abandon us. Right now, our friend Mahmoud is sitting in an ICE detention center and has missed the birth of his son. Our friends' visas are being revoked. The people of Gaza have just run out of flour and are facing imminent mass starvation after over a year of bombing and indiscriminate killing. Just today, 50 Palestinians have been killed. Your students are terrified. And meanwhile, I am being called into disciplinary meetings because students peacefully chained themselves to a gate that has been closed for months to bring attention to the abduction of their friend. My graduation is in jeopardy because Jewish students staged a peaceful sit-in on a public area of low steps to protest the targeting of our peers by ICE in our name. This is the choice Barnard is making, and I cannot for the life of me understand it. I cannot understand how so many Barnard admin and conduct officers can so completely betray the values this institution espouses and be blind to the dangerous silencing of activism across this country, complicit in. It is this reality that you stand for? I am hoping to graduate next month. I am looking forward to what comes next. If, in my future, I accomplish anything, if I succeed at all in creating more just, more equitable world I want to see, it will have everything to do with the classmates, the professors, the faculty who fought alongside me and supported me throughout these last 2 terrifying years, and nothing to do with the administration, which abandoned us students
but foreigner.
Is the mic on?
It should be.
Okay.
All the way.
Hold it up to my mouth. Now it's working.
Loud and
Louder,
angle it.
closer.
Angle it. Yeah.
Angle.
Angle it in. Think like pop star. Like
Yeah.
yeah, like
Hold
that.
on, it got turned off.
That'll do it.
Now it's on. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Now that's
Yes.
Yeah.
better.
Right up
Okay.
there.
Great. Okay. I don't have anything quite as pretty to read as some other people, but I found some advice from someone who's been through something a lot like what we're going through right now. This is Michael Ignatieff, who is a leader at Central European University. And he wrote about giving some advice to American university leaders, really, college president. I don't know that ours have been asking for advice for how to resist, but we could imagine that they might, or we could take this advice ourselves. This article is called "How a University Fights an Authoritarian Regime." Victor Orban came for me. Donald Trump is coming for you. Here's what to do. He wrote. Now I'm just going to read. A college president phoned me the other day to ask for advice. He sounded worried. His institution is facing devastating cuts to federal research funding that helps his university maintain a great medical school and path-breaking science labs. Faced with such a threat, louder. Faced with such a threat, he wanted to know what he could learn from my time as president of Central European University when Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban tried to expel us from Budapest. CEU, a U.S. accredited graduate school in the humanities and social sciences, was founded by George Soros and a group of dissident Hungarian academics back in 1991. For 25 years, CEU stayed out of politics, trained graduate students, and earned a reputation as a serious scholarly institution. Then in late 2016, right after Donald Trump's first election victory, Orban attacked. There is a certain kind of populist politician who needs enemies to give someone his base can hate. Orban chose Soros. In the election campaign from late 2016 to the spring of 2018, Orban campaigned to drive Soros and his influence out of Hungary. CEU is not Orban's target, though he wanted to silence us if he could. He introduced a law requiring us to seek his permission to operate and requiring us to set up a campus in the United States. Many American universities overseas do not operate campuses at home. We were one of them. But this, too, was a pretext. For the next 3 years, the Orban government tried to drive us out. The question the embattled university president asked, in effect, was how a university fights an authoritarian regime. I told him to frame his fight to gain as many allies as he can. Mobilize your alumni networks. Enlist families whose children's lives have been saved in your hospitals. Reach out to companies that have commercialized your research. Make contact with universities in red and blue states, public and private, who face the same threat. Do it fast. Make sure your campaign is not just about you, because that opens you to an attack as a defender of privilege. Make the case to the public that these attacks are senseless assaults on institutions that promote what America is famous for, life-saving science and world-class innovation. At CEU, we framed Orban's attack as an affront to academic freedom in Europe, indeed, the most serious one since the 1930s. We didn't draw parallels with Hitler's expulsion of the fine flower of German academic life and their forced emigration. We didn't have to. Within days, university presidents from around the world were bombarding Orban with incredulous and indignant emails, copied to us, asking why a member of the European Union and NATO, a supposed democracy, was attacking a free institution. Universities don't and shouldn't organize demonstrations on their behalf. Oh well. But again, we didn't have to. One Sunday afternoon in May, we looked out our window and saw 80,000 Budapest citizens streaming by the university on their way to Parliament, chanting, "Free universities in a free society." It was the largest demonstration in Budapest since the end of the Cold War. Those people understood that when a university is attacked, everyone's freedom is attacked. That's a message American college presidents should adopt as their own. Our campaign put real pressure on the Orban regime, and had we been able to count on the support of the Trump administration, we might have forced him to back down. We were, after all, an American institution accredited by New York State and the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. But Trump was in the White House, and since Orban had been the first European head of state to endorse him when he was still just a candidate, the Trump administration chose to let us dangle in the wind. We survived, but only by moving to Vienna, where we have prospered. The real challenge, whenever an authoritarian government attacks a university, is that they have already prepared the ground. Portraying universities as privileged enclaves of the entitled and the condescending, trapped in their own self-regarding bubble of wokeness. These politicians play expertly on the resentments of those who don't have college degrees. They grab hold of the flag of academic freedom and wave it in the face of university administrators struggling to balance the imperatives of campus order and civility against their First Amendment obligations. The Germans have a word for this strategy. It is called Kulturkampf, and it proceeds from an intuition associated with Trump's former strategist, Steve Bannon. Culture is upstream from politics. Translation: if you can win the culture war, you win the political war. Faced with Kulturkampf waged by a ferociously ideological administration intent on neutralizing academe as a critical voice, university presidents will be inclined to hunker down and wait for the storm to pass. But it may not pass. Even if it does, the universities that survive may be weakened, frightened shadows of their former selves. So I said to the embattled president who called me, "You're going to need an alliance that pulls together American families, employers, unions, companies, the whole network of people and institutions beyond your campus who understand that the universities of America are critical to everything that is good about the country, its commitment to freedom, its devotion to excellence, its leadership in science and medicine. This alliance is going to have to get political, to reach across red state and blue state, identify the members of Congress from both sides of the House who understand why universities matter to their communities, to the American economy, and to America's deserved reputation for excellence. Don't mince words. It's too late to play nice. Call a spade a spade. Convince enough Americans that the administration's strategy deserves only one name: vandalism."
Yay. All right, keep it moving. Who's next? All right. Yes. So we are Voices from Barnard.
Yes, welcome.
We are engaging in this durational protest for academic freedom and student safety. Should I just reiterate, since we're in the middle of the hour? Additionally, in support of CU-IMC's action items for the Columbia Board of Trustees, we reiterate the following 6 demands. 1, stand up for higher ed. 2, fight back against the federal attacks. 3, protect and defend students and international scholars. 4, preserve academic freedom, freedom of expression, and Columbia University's autonomy to govern these. 5, reestablish and affirm tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And 6, protect our researchers and provide backup funding. All right, so all I have today is some excerpts from a book called On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. And I guess I'll just read a chapter from here. May as well start with the first one. Do not obey in advance. Okay, do not obey in advance. Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want, and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do. Anticipatory obedience is a political tragedy. Perhaps rulers did not initially know that citizens were willing to compromise this value or that principle. Perhaps a new regime did not at first have the direct means of influencing citizens one way or another. After the German elections of 1932, which permitted Adolf Hitler to form a government, or the Czechoslovak elections of 1946, where communists were victorious. The next crucial step was anticipatory obedience. Because enough people, in both cases, voluntarily extended their services to the new leaders, Nazis and communists alike realized that they could move quickly toward a full regime change. The first heedless acts of conformity could not then be reversed. In early 1938, Adolf Hitler, by then securely in power in Germany, was threatening to annex neighboring Austria. After the Austrian chancellor conceded, it was the Austrians' anticipatory obedience that decided the fate of Austrian Jews. Local Austrian Nazis captured Jews and forced them to scrub the streets to remove symbols of independent Austria. Crucially, people who were not Nazis looked on with interest and amusement. Nazis who had kept lists of Jewish property stole what they could. Crucially, others who were not Nazis joined in the theft. As the political theorist Hannah Arendt remembered, when German troops invaded the country and Gentile neighbors started riots at Jewish homes, Austrian Jews began to commit suicide. The anticipatory obedience of Austrians in March 1938 taught the high Nazi leadership what was possible. It was in Vienna that August that Adolf Eichmann established the Central Office for Jewish Emigration. In November 1938, following the Austrian example of March, German Nazis organized the national pogrom known as Kristallnacht. In 1941, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union took the initiative to devise the methods of mass killing without orders to do so. They guessed what their superiors wanted and demonstrated what was possible. It was far more than Hitler had thought. At the very beginning, anticipatory obedience means adapting instinctively without reflecting to a new situation. Do only Germans do such things? The Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram, contemplating Nazi atrocities, wanted to show that there was a particular authoritarian personality that explained why Germans behaved as they had. He devised an experiment to test the proposition, but failed to get permission to carry it out in Germany. So he undertook it instead in a Yale University building in 1961, at around the same time that Adolf Eichmann was being tried in Jerusalem for his part in the Nazi Holocaust of the Jews. Milgram told his subjects, some Yale students, some New Haven residents, that they would be applying an electrical shock to other participants in an experiment about learning. In fact, the people attached to the wires on the other side of a window were in on the scheme with Milgram and only pretended to be shocked. As the subjects, they thought, shocked the people they thought were participants in the learning experiment, they saw a horrible sight. People whom they did not know and against whom they had no grievance seemed to be suffering greatly, pounding the glass and complaining of heart pain. Even so, most subjects followed Milgram's instructions and continued to apply what they thought were ever greater shocks until the victims appeared to die. Even those who did not proceed all the way to the apparent killing of their fellow human beings left without inquiring about the health of the other participants. Milgram grasped that people are remarkably receptive to new rules in a new setting. They are surprisingly willing to harm and kill others in the service of some new purpose if they are so instructed by a new authority. I found so much obedience, Milgram remembered, that I hardly saw the need for taking the experiment to Germany. Shall I pass it on? Anybody else? yeah. I will now pass it on to our next speaker. Thank you.
Voices from Barnard. Yes, hold on. We'll get the dongle.
Hi,
Yep.
I'm.
Want to make sure your
Thank
mic for
you.
the live stream. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here for
Hi,
Barnard.
everybody. I am Debbie Becker. I'm a sociology professor at Barnard. Very happy to be here with my colleagues and all of you. So I'm going to read a couple of different things. First, I want to read some words from Ella Baker, lifelong organizer and activist in the civil rights movement. I'm going to read a short excerpt from an address that she made to a 1974 Puerto Rico solidarity rally. And one of the things that resonates with me is she mentions my hometown of Norfolk, Virginia, not in a great way, where I grew up. So louder. Okay,
Right.
better. So Ella Baker. Friends, brothers, and sisters in the struggle for human dignity and freedom. I am here to represent the struggle that has gone on for 300 years or more years. A struggle to be recognized as citizens in a country in which we were born. I have had about 40 or 50 years of struggle ever since a little boy on the streets of Norfolk called me an N-word. I struck him back. And then I had to learn that hitting back with my fists, one individual, was not enough. It takes organization. It takes dedication. It takes the willingness to stand by and to do what has to be done when it has to be done. A nice gathering like today is not enough. You have to go back and reach out to your neighbors who don't speak to you. And you have to reach out to your friends who think they are making it good and get them to understand that they, as well as you and I, cannot be free in America or anywhere else where there is capitalism and imperialism until we get people to recognize that they themselves have to make the struggle and have to make the fight for freedom every day in the year, every year until they win it.
See that for a second.
It's not working. I'm still talking.
Testing. All right, keep talking.
Okay, so the next thing I want to read is part of a letter that was composed by several Jewish faculty back in April of whatever year.
Was it last year?
Last year, 2024. Several of them are here now. Signed by over 20 Jewish faculty at Columbia and Barnard. I want you to know that we composed a very long letter in advance of President Shafiq's abysmal appearance before the Congressional Committee, stating how we thought she should respond to this attack. She took none of our advice, but we published it nonetheless, and it's in the congressional record. We also published a shorter version of this in the Columbia Spectator. I'm going to read from that. So to be sure, anti-Semitism is a grave concern that should be scrutinized alongside racism, sexism, Islamophobia, homophobia, and all other forms of hate. These hateful ideologies exist everywhere, and we would be ignorant to believe that they don't exist at Columbia. When anti-Semitism rears its head, it should be swiftly denounced and its perpetrators held to account. However, it is absurd to claim that anti-Semitism, quote, discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews, the definition of anti-Semitism that I and my colleagues advocate, according to the Jerusalem Declaration definition, is rampant on Columbia's campus. It's absurd. I'm going to repeat that. It's absurd to claim that anti-Semitism, according to that definition, is rampant on Columbia's campus. To argue that taking a stand against Israel's war on Gaza is anti-Semitic is to pervert the meaning of the term. Labeling pro-Palestinian expression as anti-Semitism, as anti-Jewish hate speech, requires a dangerous and false conflation of Zionism with Jewishness, of political ideology with identity. This conflation betrays a woefully inaccurate understanding and disingenuous misrepresentation of Jewish history, identity, and politics. It erases more than a century of debates among Jews about the nature of a Jewish homeland in the biblical land of Israel, including Israel's status as a Jewish nation state. It dismisses the experiences of the post-Zionist, non-Zionist, and anti-Zionist Jews who work, study, and live on our campus. The political passions that arise from conflict in the Middle East may deeply unsettle students, faculty, and staff with opposing views. But feeling uncomfortable is not the same thing as being threatened or discriminated against. Free expression, which is fundamental to both academic inquiry and democracy, necessarily entails exposure to views that may be deeply disconcerting. We can support students who feel real and valid discomfort towards protests advocating for Palestinian liberation, while also stating clearly and firmly that this discomfort is not an issue of safety. As faculty, we dedicate ourselves in our classrooms to keeping every student safe from real harm, harassment, and discrimination. We commit to helping them learn to experience discomfort and even confrontation as part of the process of skill and knowledge acquisition, and to help them realize that ideas we oppose can be contested without being suppressed. Should I do another one or? Okay, so the last thing I was going to read, following on my colleague Gabrielle here, I have some other statements from On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. The president is a nationalist, which is not at all the same thing as a patriot. A nationalist encourages us to be our worst, and then tells us that we are our best. A nationalist, although endlessly brooding on power, victory, defeat, revenge, wrote Orwell, tends to be uninterested in what happens in the real world. Nationalism is relativist, since the only truth is the resentment we feel when we contemplate others. As the novelist Danilo Keys put it, nationalism has no universal values, aesthetic or ethical. A patriot, by contrast, wants the nation to live up to its ideals, which means asking us to be our best selves. A patriot must be concerned with the real world, which is the only place where his country can be loved and sustained. A patriot has universal values, standards by which he, I'll add she, they, judge their nation, always wishing it will be and wishing that it would be better. I'm going to find another quote and keep talking. Okay. You submit to tyranny when you renounce the difference between what you want to hear and what actually is the case. And one more is in here. I'm going to find it. There's two more. Believe in truth. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power, because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding lights. And finally, history permits us to be responsible, not for everything, but for something. History gives us the company of those who have done and suffered more than we have. Thank you.
Oh. Okay. Let's hear it for Thea. Okay. So I think, is this on? Okay, that we might close out the hour with some Palestinian voices back on the street here. This one is, "Fuck your lecture on craft. My people are dying. Colonizers write about flowers. I tell you about children throwing rocks at Israeli tanks seconds before becoming daisies. I want to be like those poets who care about the moon. Palestinians don't see the moon from jail cells and prisons. It's so beautiful, the moon. They're so beautiful, the flowers. I pick flowers for my dead father when I'm sad. He watches Al Jazeera all day. I wish Jessica would stop texting me, Happy Ramadan. I know I'm American because when I walk into a room, something dies. Metaphors about death are for poets who think ghosts care about sounds. When I die, I promise to haunt you forever. One day I'll write about the flowers like we own them. And then finally, because I think we could all use a little bit more of this, Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating mace and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, It is I you have been looking for, and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. All right, give it up for Bernard one more time.
All right, we've got 1 more minute until our next milestone. Can I hear 11 o'clock from y'all? I need to get this light out because, you know, sometimes you need to shine a light on them. I don't know if y'all know what that is, but for this group coming up next, we got to shine the light on them when they come out because they're coming up from all these different departments and areas. So we really just want to give so much love and support to the Black Solidarity.
Genuine quest to understand the world in order to change it. Goes on from there. Robin Kelly's important 2023 essay in Our History Has Always Been Contraband. Yeah. And I need that too. That's my script. Thank you. Now I'm going to go to another luminary, the great historian Darlene Clark Hine, who wrote a 2014 essay. What's the essay title? A Black Studies Manifesto, Characteristics of a Black Study Mind, published in the Black Scholar, the very famous journal in the field. And what she does in this essay is she articulates what she saw at that time, and I think it's still relevant, 5 preoccupations or themes that are recurring in the Black Studies tradition. The first being intersectionality. Mil gracias. Thank you. African American, she writes in 2014, African American studies is intersectional to the extent that it is concerned with the interrelationship between distinct categories of oppression. Identity and the ways in which they reflect specific relations both to dominant or hierarchical power structures and to each other. The key identity characteristics markers are race, gender, class, sexuality, and location, geographic regions, nation, space, etc. Intersectionality allows us to analyze how these categories interact to strengthen or undermine each other while not losing sight of their historical and geographical variability. The second principle, nonlinear thinking. Black Studies is as concerned with the past as it is invested in transforming the present to anticipate and bring about a better, freer future. Black Studies recognizes that revolutions can and often do turn backward, as they are now, and occur with interrupted irregularity. Thus, understanding previous historical eras is especially important or relevant to the development of strategies and goals to sculpt an improved future. Principle number 3, diasporic analysis and perspectives. Black studies students and scholars are not bound by any geographic location. We consider the world to be our purview, and thus it is necessary to study Black experiences within global processes of racial ordering in the Americas, Europe, Africa, the Pacific, and Asia. Black studies scholars connect, draw parallels, and chart discontinuities between people of color in diverse locations at disparate times or eras. The 4th principle, oppression and resistance. Black studies scholars investigate and seek to understand the mechanisms of oppression while simultaneously excavating the affected population's myriad forms of resistance. For instance, indigenous subaltern resistance, the development of specific counter-narratives, distinctive cultural practices and belief systems executed in ways to preserve collectivities and individual humanity in the face of genocidal conditions. And finally, principle number 5, solidarity, the theme of our hour this evening. Hein writes, a Black studies mind acknowledges and embraces solidarity with all those subordinated by power relations. All those subordinated by power relations, I repeat. Analyzing the layered connections between anti-Black racism, settler colonialism, xenophobia, and imperialism, as well as the situation of other non-white and non-European groups, such as Latinos, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, and Arab Americans, among many others. I think it's fitting that Hein ended that piece, it's a short piece, with solidarity, because it's in that context that I think that brings us here together, this extraordinary movement of solidarity with the people of Palestine, all of us who are seeking freedom in this day and age. I want to end with, I think, the foremost theorist, at least of our moment, even though she's long past, of solidarity in terms of its poetic expressions, and that being June Jordan. I need that now. We just heard from him, we're going to hear from him again. And I'm reading from some passages from the introduction to her 2022 collection, Some of Us Did Not Die, New and Selected Essays from June Jordan. In the intro, Jordan talks about her evolution as an activist and a poet, starting with her days as a student at Barnard in the 1950s. She describes her evolution in the following manner. She wrote, quote, I have evolved from an observer to a victim I have evolved from an observer to a victim to an activist passionately formulating methods of resistance against tyranny of any kind. She continues later, the confrontation with heavyweight intolerance carried me through our civil rights revolution and into the resistance to the war against Vietnam, and then into the realm of gender and sexuality politics. And those strivings in aggregate carried me from Brooklyn to Mississippi to South Africa, to Nicaragua, to Israel, to Palestine, to Lebanon, and to Northern Ireland. And every single one of those embattled baptisms clarified pivotal connections among otherwise apparently disparate victories or among apparently disparate events of suffering and loss. At the end of the essay, she turns to the words of Holocaust survivor Ellie Gross, who said in an interview, saying, quote, she said, she meant to live. She says in the interview, I guess it was my destiny to live, to survive the Holocaust. Referring to Gross, Jordan wrote, speaking of Gross, she meant that to live is not just a given. To live means you owe something big to those whose lives are taken away from them. And 2 things happened to me, Jordan wrote. I realized that regardless of the tragedy, poem, Our Destiny to Live. So let's get on with it. June Jordan, 2002. Thank you so much.
Hope, at least, not yet, to halt the slaughter in South Africa. And there's a reason for that. America became white. The people who, as they claim, settled the country became white because of the necessity of denying the Black presence and justifying the Black subjugation. No community can be based on such a principle, or in other words, no community can be established on so genocidal a lie. White men from Norway, for example, where they are Norwegians, became white by slaughtering the cattle, poisoning the wells, torching the houses, massacring Native Americans, raping Black women. This moral erosion has made it quite impossible for those who think of themselves as white in this country to have any moral authority at all, privately or publicly. The multitudinous bulk of them sit stunned before their television sets, swallowing garbage that they know to be garbage, and in a profound and unconscious effort to justify this torpor that disguises in a profound and bitter panic. Pay a vast amount of attention to athletic, even though even though they know that the football player, the son of the republic, their sons, is merely another aspect of the money-making scheme. They are either relieved or embittered by the presence of the Black boy on the team. I do not know if they remember how long and how hard fought to keep him off it. I know that they do not dare have any notion of the price of Black people, mothers and fathers, paid and pay. They do not want to know the meaning or face the shame of what they compelled out of what they took as the necessity of being white. Joe Louis or Jackie Robinson or Cassius Clay, aka Muhammad Ali, to pay. I know that they themselves would not have liked to pay it. There never has been a labor movement in this country, the proof being the absence of a Black presence in the so-called father-to-son unions. There are perhaps some niggers in the window, but Blacks have no power in the labor unions. Just so does the white community, as a means of keeping itself white, elect as they imagine their political representatives. No nation in the world, including England, is represented by so stunning a pantheon of the relentlessly mediocre. I will not name names. I will leave that to you. But this cowardice, this necessity of justifying a total false identity and of justifying what must be called a genocidal history has placed everyone now living into the hands of the most ignorant and powerful people the world has ever seen. And how did they get that way? By deciding that they were white, by opting for safety instead of life, by persuading themselves that a Black child's life meant nothing compared to a white child's life, by abandoning their children to the things white men could buy, by informing their children that Black women, Black men, and Black children had no human integrity, that those who call themselves white were bound to respect. And in this debasement and definition of Black people, they debased and defined themselves and have brought humanity to the edge of oblivion because they think they are white. They cannot allow themselves to be tormented by the suspicion that all men are brothers because they think they are white. They are looking for or bombing into existence stable populations, cheerful natives, and cheap labor. Because they think they are white, they believe, as even no child believes, in the dream of safety. Because they think they are white, however vociferously they may be, and however multitudinous, they are as speechless as Lot's wife, looking backward, changed into a pillar of salt. However, white being absolutely a moral choice, for there are no white people, the crisis of leadership for those of us whose identity has been forged or branded as Black is nothing new. We, who were not Black before we got here either, who were defined as Black by the slave trade, have paid for the crisis of leadership in the white community for a very long time, and have resoundingly, even when we faced the worst about ourselves, survived and triumphed over it. If we had not survived and triumphed, there would not be a Black American alive. And the fact that we are still here, even in suffering, darkness, danger, endlessly defined by those who do not dare define or even confront themselves, is the key to the crisis in white leadership. The past informs us of various kinds of people, criminals, adventurers, and saints, to say nothing, of course, of popes, but it is the Black condition and only that which informs us concerning white people. It is a terrible paradox. But those who believed that they could control and define Black people divested themselves of the power to control and define themselves. Thank you. And we're coming up next with.
Who is up next? And we can put the cover on the live stream for anyone who doesn't want to be on live.
Is my colleague over here?
My colleague. Are you
Yes.
going up? Yes, sir. All right. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
thank you. I was
All
looking.
right. Let's go. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you speaking?
Yeah.
So sorry. Okay. Oh, you want to? No. That's very good. Thank you. Woo! Let's hear it. Thank you so much. Woo!
Great. All right. Let me get my.
I'm going to remind you, speak into the mic like this.
Okay, no
Hold
problem.
it up like that.
Hold it up like that.
Speak in the air.
All right. Okay, so first I just want to thank the organizers. I've been watching this live stream between meetings, and I would suggest folks go back to it because I have learned a great deal over the last 24 hours or whatever it's been at this point. So I would just recommend that. I wanted to say that, so first I wasn't going to speak, but I've decided to, and I brought something just in case. That a friend of mine asked me the other day, why is it that so many of these students continue to put their lives on the line when they know what is at risk, right? And I said to them that in the 1980s, when I was a student at Cornell, no one could have said to me, don't do this, and I would have followed them. No one could have convinced me not to be part of those protest movements, right? It's a different time for sure, and still the issues remain the same, right? Locally, nationally, globally. So for those who often question why students do this, why faculty and staff and community members are part of this, whether it's in support of Palestinians, whether it's in support of people in Haiti, whether it's in support of people in the Congo, right? That it is about the principle of justice and freedom, right? It is about a shared humanity and shared justice for all. So remind yourselves of that. Okay. So what I wanted to read is from a person who I was able to meet a few times, twice when I was part of groups that brought her to Cornell and later on UCLA. And I used to wear a button with the title of this essay. You see buttons now, but not as much. Before it was a big thing, right? This is how you advertise. Okay, anyway. And so this is by Audre Lorde. And it's part of the essay in Sister Outsider. Essays and Speeches published in 1984. So it's just an excerpt. I was going to die, if not sooner than later, whether or not I had ever spoken myself. My silences had not protected me. Your silence will not protect you. What are the words you do not have yet? What do you need to say? What are the tyrannies you swallow day by day and attempt to make your own until you will sicken and die of them, still in silence? We have been socialized to respect fear more than our own need for language. And of course, I am afraid. You can hear it in my voice. Because the transformation of silence into language and action is an act of self-revelation, and that always seems fraught with danger. But my daughter, when I told her of our topic and my difficulty with it, said, quote, tell them about how you're never really a whole person if you remain silent. Because there's always that one little piece inside of you that wants to be spoken out. And if you keep ignoring it, it gets madder and madder and hotter and hotter. And if you don't speak it out one day, it will just up and punch you in the mouth end quote. I began to ask each time, what's the worst that could happen to me if I tell this truth? Unlike women in other countries, our breaking silence is unlikely to have us jailed, quote, disappeared, or run off the road at night. Of course, we are experiencing this now. Our speaking out will irritate some people, get us called bitchy or hypersensitive, and disrupt some dinner parties. And then our speaking out will permit other women to speak until laws are changed and lives are saved and the world is altered forever. One more part. Next time, ask, what's the worst that will happen? Then push yourself a little further than you dare. Once you start to speak, people will yell at you. They will interrupt you, put you down, and suggest it's personal, and the world won't end. And the speaking will get easier and easier. And you will find you have fallen in love with your own vision, which you may have never realized you had. And you will lose some friends and lovers and realize you don't miss them. And new ones will find you and cherish you. And you will still flirt and paint your nails, dress up and party because, as I think Emma Goldman said, quote, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution, end quote. And at last you'll know with surpassing certainty that only one thing is more frightening than speaking your truth, and that is not speaking. Thank you. Woo! It's all right.
Okay, live mic. Woohoo! Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again to the organizers and to all of my friends and colleagues, all of you. Uh, this is specifically for our students, and we want to shout out again our students who ignited a movement, ignited us to remember why we came here in the first place. And Audrey wrote a poem for you a long time ago, and this is for you. It's called For Each of You. Be who you are and will be. Learn to cherish that boisterous black angel that drives you up one day and down the other, protecting the place where your power rises, running like hot blood from the same source as your pain. When you are hungry, learn to eat whatever sustains you until morning, but do not be misled by details simply because you live them. Do not let your head deny and hands any memory of what passes through them, not your eyes nor your heart. Everything can be used except what is wasteful. You will need to remember this when you are accused of destruction. Even when they are dangerous, examine the heart of those machines you hate before you discard them, and never mourn their lack of power, lest you be condemned to relive them. If you do not learn to hate, you'll never be lonely enough to love easily, nor will you always be brave, although it does not grow any easier. Do not pretend to convenient beliefs, even when they are righteous. You will never be able to defend your city while shouting. Remember whatever pain you bring back from your dreaming, but do not look for gods in the sea nor any part of a rainbow. Each time you love, love as deeply as if it were forever. Only nothing is eternal. Speak proudly to your children, wherever you may find them. Tell them you are offspring of slaves, and your mother was a princess in darkness. Audre Lorde. I'm gonna skip to the part with Sister Sonia. Okay.
justice, I say, come, wrap your tongues around truth, I say, come, wrap your hands with deeds and prayer. You brown ones, you yellow ones, you black ones, you gay ones, you white ones, you lesbian ones. Come to this battlefield called life, called life, called life, called life, called life, called life, I wanna stay on the battlefield. I wanna stay on the battlefield till I I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. Come to this battlefield. Like a
Yes. All right. Okay. All
Y'all, we have a milestone moment.
right.
We are at midnight. We have made it through day one, and we're at the halfway point. Let's go!
Here, I'll take the mic. All right, we're gonna have a little something different. Want to get everybody up and moving a little bit if you can. Hopefully you can hear this. Get up. Can you hear that? All right. All right, come on, let's move it. I see you moving. We're getting tired. All right, get your hips moving. I couldn't ask for another. Come on, keep it moving. All right, halfway there. All right. Okay, I faded out. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to be hosting the next hour, which is the Columbia School of Social Work. I want to start. All right, and I want to thank the organizers, Rihanna, Susan, M, many, Tia, others, E, lots and lots and lots of people who organized this. Thanks to all the speakers who have come out so far, all the amazing educational points that have been made. I've learned a lot. I know everyone here has learned a lot. I'm going to reiterate the 6 points that we are organizing around. We're losing our signs. I don't know if someone can grab those. 1, we want Columbia to stand up for higher education and for the university as a public good, and so that it can serve its purpose to society. So we call on the Board of Trustees and the President of Columbia University to propose and establish a mutual academic defense compact among all members of the Association of American Universities. We want them to fight back against federal attacks. We want the board and the university to deploy every legal means possible to challenge the federal government's termination or threatened termination of grants, including cutting the indirect cost rate, as well as any efforts to infringe on our academic freedom and independence as a place of study and knowledge generation and critical
knowledge review. Ooh, paper is hard. We also demand that this university begin to protect and defend students, especially international and activist students. The students at this university have been incredibly brave. They have put their academic careers, their lives, their safety, their family safety on the line to stand up for what they believe in. And in return, they have been abducted. We demand that the university defend them and provide legal assistance if possible. We demand that the university preserve academic freedom, freedom of expression, and Columbia University's autonomy. We must have a free and independent university. We demand that they reestablish and affirm the tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging here at the university. And we demand that they protect our researchers and provide backup funding. These are the 6 tenets from the CU-IMC, which is Columbia University Irving Medical Center. And those are some of the things that we're organizing around. You've heard from many other speakers today who have been talking about what we are demanding otherwise. I am wondering if someone could just come and hold these papers so they don't fly away while I pull up my notes. Thank you so much. Again, let's hear it for the organizers and for the Black Solidarity Hour. Woo! All right. Okay. So my name is Victoria Fry. I'm a professor at the Columbia School of Social Work. I also happen to have gone to Columbia College. I graduated in '91. I also got my master's degree in epidemiology from Columbia Mailman School and my doctorate in public health from Columbia. So I actually have a really long association with this university, and although I did not work here immediately after graduating, I've worked in lots of different places, but I did start out here as a project director on an HIV and violence prevention study about 30 years ago. And that is what I study, and that is what I'm going to be talking about very briefly, hopefully. Well, although we have an hour to fill, so who knows how brief I'll be. But what I want to talk about is the impact that all of this is having on the field of HIV prevention and care and on the communities who are affected by HIV. And I also want to start by talking a little bit about, why are we here? We are here because universities are a public good, and we believe in that. And we have heard from the political scientists tonight and today as to why authoritarian and how authoritarianism and authoritarian regimes attack public universities. One of the charges of our university is to generate and to critically evaluate knowledge. And in the field of HIV prevention, what we are trying to do is to end the HIV epidemic. And so the research that I do, that I work on with my colleagues, attempts to do exactly that. And I want it to be clear that the studies that are being defunded, that are being canceled, that are being terminated by the federal administration, the vast majority of them focus on either HIV, LGBTQAI plus populations, as well as on transgender people and transgender health. We need to be very, very clear that this is intentional, that it is on purpose that these grants and this field of study is being attacked and defunded. We have to be very, very clear about that. And so what I have done is I have reached out to my colleagues and to my peers and to my community members and asked them to tell me, to talk to me, to write testimony, and to describe how this has been affecting them. And I just want to say some of these are going to be anonymous. Others are, people have named themselves. But I want to say that at the heart of this, again, is this general belief and feeling and a horrible, horrible knowledge that they are trying to kill us. There is a general belief that this is part of a purposeful attempt to eliminate certain types of people from our society. And I think that knowing that there is this existential fear and threat that people are feeling who are at the centers of these kinds of projects, we have to realize that this is what is being communicated. So when institutions, when administrators, when faculty members, when people do not stand up to defend against the defunding of the science that will save lives, it is experienced as you are not standing up for my life. You are not standing up for my right to exist. You are not standing up for me, and thus you are on the side of people who want us to die. The power of that has to be stated. This is the way people in the HIV prevention and care community are experiencing the lack of defense against the defunding of the research, the programs, the defunding of PEPFAR. There's something called the PEPFAR tracker, which is tracking the hundreds of thousands of lives that have already been lost due to defunding of PEPFAR. So with that said, I know that was a lot, but first I want to read a statement from Mr. Mark Page, who is a colleague of mine who works on an HIV prevention study that exists. I stand in unwavering solidarity with all students, faculty, staff, and members of the Harlem and Greater Columbia University community. I affirm our collective commitment to the principles of equality, dignity, and justice for all people. In this critical moment, I stand firmly against racism, fascism, and authoritarianism in all their forms. I believe and uphold and defend the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution, including the right to free speech, assembly, and academic freedom protected under the First Amendment, as well as the guarantees of equal protection and due process under the 14th Amendment and the protections against racial discrimination in voting and civil rights under the 15th Amendment. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. In that spirit, I affirm that any attack on the rights of students, scholars, or communicators dedicated to justice and truth is an attack on the very ideals of our democracy. I believe that universities must remain safe spaces where students, faculty, and staff can engage in critical inquiry, courageous dialogue, and peaceful protests without fear of repression or retaliation. Frederick Douglass powerfully declared, "The life of the nation is secure only while the nation is honest, truthful, and virtuous." With a full heart, mind, body, and soul, I honor this vision by defending the integrity of academic spaces and the vital role they play in the ongoing quest for freedom, a freedom for all God's people, a freedom for all creation. I honor the historic role that Harlem and Columbia University played in the ongoing struggle for civil rights and justice for people, for all people. I, with the faculty, staff, students, and members of Harlem and Columbia University, draw inspiration from Booker T. Washington, who urged, "Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome." In that spirit, we, the people, recognize the profound challenges faced by many and the courage to take a stand for what is right and good. Today and every day, I shall renew my dedication to building a future grounded in inclusion, democracy, and respect for human rights. Together, we must affirm that justice, truth, and solidarity shall prevail. In the name of all that is good and just, may love always triumph. Mark is someone who works very intensively on the HIV prevention studies that I have been discussing. I also want to read, yay! So another area that has been cut by the current administration and that we are demanding that the university support one way or another is in vaccine research. So vaccine research, both research on vaccine hesitancy, as well as HIV vaccine research is being cut. And HIV prevention, again, research generally has been cut. So one HIV prevention, care, treatment, and vaccine researcher wrote to me, to us, to be read today. The recent cuts by the NIH to our HIV-related research grants, along with the looming threat of further reductions, have had a significant and detrimental impact on our communities. These funding cuts have not only increased anxiety and job insecurity among our committed research staff, but have also introduced incredible uncertainties for our study participants and community members. Particularly among transgender individuals and gay, bisexual, same-gender loving, and other men who have sex with men, groups that are specifically targeted by this government administration. The consequences of these funding cuts reach far beyond the immediate effects on our research workforce, which includes junior scientists who are at just the beginning of their careers. They jeopardize the advances we have already made in understanding, preventing, and treating HIV. Continued investment in HIV research is absolutely essential. The potential loss of millions of lives due to insufficient research and program funding serves as a grim reminder of the urgency of our mission. We must advocate for ongoing support, not cuts, for HIV prevention and treatment research to ensure that we can continue to develop effective vaccines and prevention strategies, innovative treatments, and ultimately a cure. Our communities deserve better, and the fight against HIV must remain a top priority. It needs to be made clear that we had the end of the HIV epidemic in sight in the United States. It was within sight, and that has disappeared. I'm looking at my colleague who has on his ACT UP cap, silence equals death. And there is nothing more powerful. I know you're going to be up here in a minute, but that is what we're saying. Their silence equals our death, right? That is what our communities are saying and experiencing. It cannot be said or emphasized enough. The next piece of testimony I want to read is from John Svakis, also known as Stella Doro. Sorry, I'm exhausted. The Queen Mom of Vaccine. Stella Doro, the Queen Mom of Vaccine, has been running Vaccinalicious for Project Achieve and the HIV Trials Network, the HVTN in New York City for about 20 years. John writes, as a 20-year veteran of the Community Advisory Board of the New York Blood Center, Project Achieve, and Columbia University's HIV Vaccine Trials Unit, I have been out in the field talking to the emerging LGBTQAI+ community and nightlife, educating and recruiting young gay men, lesbian women, women of color, men of color, transgender people, while entertaining them at the same time. It seems like everything is being shoved back in the closet again. The kids who know me and perform with me or confide in me, their statuses, and they tell me not to tell their fellow performers, are open now about whether they are trans or non-binary, which nowadays is politically more of a problem than their HIV status. But I'm concerned about the self-censoring that's happening and taking away our ability to communicate effectively with our young population. Our show, Vaccinalicious, is now in its 20th year, and our tagline was always, performers uniting for an HIV vaccine. Then the tagline was changed to performers uniting for HIV prevention. And it was changed again. Well, no, it wasn't changed. It was deleted. Now we're using the phrase 20 years of education, entertainment, and engagement. No HIV, no prevention. No Queen of Vaccine, no Queen Mom of Vaccine. Matter of fact, the word vaccine has been changed to replace the double C's for the 20th anniversary to disguise the word. We are doing all of this because we are concerned. As you all may know, the photo of the plane that was dropped, the atomic bomb on Japan, was taken out of the Smithsonian. Why? Because the name of the plane was the Enola Gay. So now we have to be fearful that the algorithm and everything else is going to report all of this back to the powers that be. I am afraid that this self-censorship will create further hostility and dangerous physical violence. Fear never wins. It is absolutely critical, and again, this is me speaking now, not John. It is absolutely critical that we have the freedom and the space to speak openly, to identify the work that we're doing, to say we're doing HIV vaccine trials work, that we are doing vaccine hesitancy work. We cannot disguise this. We cannot self-censor. We have to use the exact words that we mean. We have to say gender. We have to say intersectionality. We cannot stop using these words. We cannot try to torture ourselves and contort our words to meet the demands for a sanitized version of the world that doesn't exist. John leaves us with this song from Jason Brown, his song Hope, performed by Natasha Yvette Williams on YouTube. Just imagine it. And so I sing a song about hope, though I can't guarantee there's something real behind it. I have to try to show my children I can find it. And so today my life seems crazy and impossible to bear. It must be there. Fear never wins. I sing of hope. See, I said hope. The work begins. Thank you. All right. So we have many other testimonies and testimonials from other social work and other colleagues. To, paraphrase Harvey Milk, you got to give them hope. I also think you got to give them music. So I can play some music while someone else comes up who might want to speak. I can go back to D Light. I can play something else. I know what happened here. Oh, wow. I got Who Was That is still playing. Let's just get that going. All right. Okay. Thank you. We now have another colleague. I'm going to hand you the mic. I'm going to give you the. Yep. Thank you. Woohoo!
Hi, everyone. My name's Catherine. I am both an employee and an alum of Columbia. I work at the School of Social Work. I'm not faculty. I'm not a social worker, so I'm going to do the best I can with this. Standing here tonight speaking with you on the traditional land of the Lenape people. The first time I came to New York, I was 6 years old. My parents brought us here for a major protest against nuclear weapons, so I've been around different kinds of activism for my whole life. That was a big one. You can look it up on the internet. From that moment, I knew I wanted to be in New York with the hustle, the bustle, the graffiti on the trains, the people from all over the world, everything that we have here in New York. I knew I didn't want to go to NYU, so here I ended up at Columbia. When I was here, students were pressuring the university to add an ethnic studies program. You don't hear about that as much as you hear about the anti-war protests in the 60s or the protests to divest from South Africa in the 1980s, but students were arrested here after a sit-in Low Library. So when they say the cops weren't on campus since whenever, it maybe is not accurate. And I too have spent a night in the building formerly known as Hamilton Hall. I managed to escape for a few years after graduation, but I ended up getting a job here, and now it's been another 20 years. They won't let me leave, so I guess I'm not sure what my boss thinks about my participation in this event. We also never really got the ethnic studies program the way that we had hoped, so that tells you something about Columbia. But for some reason, I still believe in this place. We know that Columbia is problematic as an institution for so many reasons. College didn't even accept women until the 1980s, and that's not even the worst thing the university has done, but I believe in this place. I work in the grants office at the School of Social Work, and the last couple of months have been some of the most difficult of my career. We lost 8 grants in the $400 million purge of March 10th, 3 training grants, 2 research grants, 2 center grants, and a doctoral fellowship. Some of them were grants that we had held for more than 10 years. Some were grants that would have ended in a few weeks anyway. a grant training underrepresented scholars to be the next generation of HIV researchers, a grant building a center on climate justice, health equity, and community well-being in East Africa, a grant developing a substance use intervention for LGBTQ kids. As Victoria said, it was intentional. Like, the cruelty was the point. They're trying to punish us. The reactions have ranged from tears to disbelief to resigned acceptance. People's research projects hang in the balance, but also their jobs and their careers. How do you explain this in a tenure packet? How do you maintain your employment when one day there's suddenly no money? And Jesus Christ, we got off early, got off easy compared to our colleagues uptown at the medical center. If you were here earlier, you heard some of their stories. And we got off easy compared to folks in other parts of the world, working for and relying on services provided by nonprofits and other organizations funded by other parts of the government like USAID, and those contracts were terminated just as abruptly. We're all still reeling. The university asked us to complete spreadsheets to quantify the impact of the loss, setting aggressive deadlines while the researchers were still in shock from the news. And now we wait. Decisions are being made behind closed doors at high levels of the university, and precious little information is trickling out. We're told that the negotiations are ongoing, but we don't know exactly what they're organizing towards. Trying to get the money back? I hope so, but at what price? And in the meantime, our researchers and their projects remain in limbo. But I believe in our students and our faculty. I believe in the research and the scholarship that happens here. I believe this mic might not be working. I believe in the amazing people I've met here, the colleagues who have become friends, the professors who inspired me. I even believe in the core curriculum, which I always saw as a key to understanding this country, whether or not I agree with it. I believe in the power, race, oppression, and privilege lens that our social work faculty teach in their classrooms and apply to their work. And I believe in the demands of the CU-StandsUP group. Stand up for higher education, fight federal attacks, protect students and scholars, preserve academic autonomy, affirm diversity and inclusion, protect research, and secure backup funding. The only way we're going to get through this is together. Thanks for staying up late with us tonight. I also have a couple of testimonials from our faculty members. Is the mic still working? Okay. Can you hear me? Sort of? Let's see. Is it back?
Mic check.
Mic check.
Keep it going. Woo woo. Did you want to test it out? Okay. Sorry. I shouldn't have messed with it. I was trying to turn it down in it.
Uh-oh.
Mic check. Keep it live for Catherine on the mic. Woo.
There we go.
Yep.
All right. Mic check, mic check. Okay, the first testimonial I'm going to read is from an associate professor at the School of Social Work, Samantha Winter, who does a lot of work in East Africa. So these are her words. My name is Sam Winter. I'm an associate professor of social work on the tenure track. I could not be present today in person, so this statement is being read on my behalf. I came to Columbia University in 2019 because I believed it to be a leader in global health research, a supporter of community-based research approaches, and a champion of human rights and grassroots advocacy. I saw universities, Columbia in particular, as spaces for deep inquiry, critical thought, freedom of expression, and open conversation. Over the 6 years I've served as faculty at Columbia, my commitment to students and the values I believe to be at the core of this institution has deepened. However, today, I am increasingly afraid and angry about what I see unfolding at the federal level and Columbia's response. In my time here, the School of Social Work in Columbia have made efforts to expand diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-oppressive and anti-racist policies and practices, to add statements and plans to websites, strengthen and approve efforts to hire and support faculty of color and LGBTQ+ faculty. But over the past 4 months, DEI messaging has been disappearing, and grants and programs to support diverse scholars and students are evaporating. And much of this started before President Trump started issuing executive orders to undermine the rights of marginalized communities. This is unacceptable. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are essential to the excellence of this institution. Columbia must reestablish and affirm its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, regardless of political pressure. As part of the $400 million in federal funding withdrawn from Columbia in March, I lost millions of dollars in research funding. That research was focused on reducing the health effects of climate change in some of the most impacted communities in East Africa. The consequences of this loss are not abstract. Nearly 60 people on our research and operations teams lost their jobs in regions with few alternative opportunities. We were forced to halt the installation of 18 weather stations and co-development of climate change and health curricula in schools, robbing students of a chance to study climate change firsthand. We lost the opportunity to link localized meteorological data into national networks to improve forecasting in the East African region. We lost support for early stage African scientists, students, and community researchers to build careers in this vital field. We had to halt community-led health interventions critical for climate change adaptation in communities across Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. These are communities that I've visited myself. The loss of these grants and countless others will have an incalculable effect on science, on society, and on global well-being. Columbia must fight back against federal attacks, against the grant terminations and indirect cost cuts that will halt critical research. Finally, I call on Columbia to protect and defend students and international scholars and their rights to free speech and advocacy. I teach in the School of Social Work, where advocacy is a core tenet of our profession. Yet today, Columbia has become a punitive and dangerous environment for students and scholars, particularly those with marginalized identities and those who dare to raise their voices. This has been amplified by the federal government's egregious rights violations, including the detention and attempted deportation of Mahmoud Khalil and Mohsen Madawi, and the cancellations of student and scholar visas. Columbia universities cannot exist without students and scholars. Columbia must do everything it can to protect them and defend their right to freedom of expression. Thanks. Hold on, I have one also from John Robertson, who was a lecturer at Columbia. Let me find it, hold on. Okay, so these are John Robertson's words. My name is John Robertson. I'm an alumnus of the doctoral program at the Columbia School of Social Work. I have taught at the Social Work School since 1993, both as a full-time lecturer and as an adjunct professor. This is a very dangerous time. The US election last fall seems to have elected an administration that does not intend to be bound by the US Constitution. Donald Trump's second administration has no respect for the Congress or the courts, and is systematically dismantling the federal government that was constructed since the progressive era at the end of the post-Civil War robber baron period. They are treating human beings in the most degraded of ways, like the vicious authoritarian regimes of the 20th and 21st century. There is little stability. Universal understandings of human rights is dismissed. Since the awful massacre in Israel on October 7, 2023, Columbia University leadership has been disconnected, and the board and the administration of the university has been functioning business as usual. The university has made no efforts to address the profound distress of students and faculty because of the massacre and the subsequent genocidal invasion of Gaza and the attacks on the West Bank, Lebanon, and Syria. When the university community fractured over these horrifying events, the leadership of the university ignored the deep and troubled reaction within the Columbia community. As the situation became more polarized, factions within the Jewish community supporting the Netanyahu government linked arms with the US ultra-right attacks on diversity, human rights, and economic justice. They used this to attack the major American universities, claiming the issue is anti-Semitism. There is no doubt that the failure of leadership at Columbia resulted in a polarization that had moments of anti-Semitic words and actions, but this was not the reason that the Republican Congress called Columbia to task, along with other universities. The motivation of the Congress was to limit academic freedom, silence voices for peace and justice, and attack international students. After the election, the heat rose with the administration of Donald Trump. The accommodating Columbia administration thought that they could negotiate away central principles of the academy to to protect funding and, in fairness, important research projects. This has turned out to be impossible. The only goal the Trump administration has is to place Columbia, along with other major universities, directly under their control and to shift the university away from inclusion, justice, human rights, and academic freedom. It is deeply troubling that students I teach and colleagues I work with are threatened because of their immigration status and because they have used their First Amendment rights to speak out about the outrageous violation of life and human rights. Columbia must now rise as one of the most powerful institutions in the US to resist the rise of the unconstitutional, authoritarian, inhuman administration. Columbia, as we know it, will not survive if it does not join the resistance. The money-obsessed board of trustees and the senior leadership must wake up and take their responsibilities as protectors of the US purpose and vision. I am glad to join this action by Columbia faculty, students, alumni, and staff to resist the accommodation to the ultra-right and to demand that Columbia courageously stand up for the values that the university has been promulgating and significantly manifesting for these hundreds of years. And that's the words of John Robertson. And I have one more testimony tonight before I hand the mic off to another social work colleague. And this is from someone who wants to remain anonymous, who is an alumni of the Mailman School of Public Health. And these are her words. Since graduating, I worked for 3 years in a Columbia lab, several more years as an epidemiologist for New York City, and now work for a national epidemiology nonprofit. I am grateful for the education I received here and for the connections I made with many of the Mailman School's wonderful faculty. However, since my days as a student, I've been deeply disappointed by the decisions of Columbia's administration. When I was a graduate student, Emma Solkowitz was still carrying her mattress from class to class in protest. She, along with 2 other women, had accused a fellow student of rape and sexual assault, complaints which both the police and Columbia refused to investigate or hold the alleged rapist accountable. By the time I left my staff position at a Columbia lab, I'd been deposed twice by lawyers for 2 faculty members engaged in a sexual harassment suit. Columbia provided legal support for the plaintiff, who ultimately won that suit. I won't weigh in on the specifics, but I can attest to the deep, deep dysfunction of that environment. There, I experienced the most stressful and inappropriate working conditions I've ever endured. By the time lawyers started seeking my testimony about what I had witnessed, I knew it was time to leave. Since then, I found joy and success in my work as an epidemiologist elsewhere. Supportive workplaces do exist. Yet in my experience, Columbia is not one of those workplaces. Women complained for years of assault at the hands of Dr. Robert Haddon, which Columbia covered up. It chills me to know that during all the years I was a student and then staff at CUMC, just down the block, Dr. Haddon was licking women's vaginas, assaults which Columbia knew about and yet did nothing to punish or prevent. It has been my experience that Columbia is only ever interested in standing up for what is right, when it is in their financial interest to do so. At this point, I generally expect that Columbia will stand by whatever figures they believe will secure the money and are uninterested in the financial risk of standing for what is right. In addition to the grievances already described, we as a country are now also living the consequence of Columbia's long-term support for Dr. Oz, a pusher of misinformation and snake oil, and of course, Columbia's unwavering commitment to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. The students at Columbia has handed over to ICE for kidnapping and imprisonment are guilty of nothing that I am not. They, along with myself, simply want to know that by being students of Columbia, we are not ourselves complicit in the history of rape, assault, harassment, misinformation, and most of all, genocidal violence. Shame on you, Columbia. I am ashamed of you. Those are the words of an alumni. Sorry to not leave you on a happier note.
Let's hear it for social work. Okay, we gotta take your dongle
Oh yeah,
off.
everyone forgets
I
about that.
know, and we're going to give it to you.
Hey everyone, I am. It's not working.
Here, go up
Working?
onto the
I'm
podium.
not gonna. I'm gonna stay
sorry,
right
I can
here.
put the cap on.
That's okay. Oh, that's okay. I think
Okay.
it can stay, but what is going on
Just
here?
hold it,
Oh,
hold
okay.
it
Here we go.
up like,
Like
like
this.
you're a rock star.
Can you hear? Yeah. Okay. No. No. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Okay. Hey everyone, I am also part of Columbia School of Social Work. I decided to stay unnamed today for many reasons, but mostly to protect those around me and those who depend on me. I was battling actually myself to see like to whether I need to speak up or whether I need to remain in the background and help with organizing. But I was too ashamed to stay silent because all the I was so inspired by everything that our students have been doing and my colleagues have been doing. So this is the middle ground that I found to be working hopefully okay. Um, so um, we talk a lot about social work being the social work's goal being to fight injustice, to fight and undo social injustice impacting human well-being. And the goal of this profession is to work ourselves out of this profession, which means that if we do our job right, there should be no job for us to do in this society, which unfortunately is not going to happen anytime soon. Um, sorry, it's too dark here. And everything that our profession values and represents and fights for is currently under attack. Diversity, equity, social and economic justice, environmental justice, protection of vulnerable groups of society. We cannot be staying quiet. Everyone has to be awakened and fight back. And I am quite disappointed with our profession that has been staying silent with everything that is going on around them, not only in communities, but in the communities that surround us, but also globally. I unfortunately have a firsthand experience of living in society where and any opposing views are squished. In fact, when I started my graduate studies, I had no idea how to be critical, even how to read critically. And that was like the most challenging thing when I first moved here. And in some of the languages, some of the work that I do internationally, I develop social work programs, and the word advocacy is non-existent in some of the languages that in the countries where I work, because it has been non-existent because of the systems that have been long-standing there and not really supporting democracy or the views or participation in human rights of people. And from 2016 feels like forever, and in this terms, right, we have been seeing more and more of this happening. Thank you. We One of the things that in this country, folks in other countries that I have worked and lived, talk about how this country is the land of democracy. Unfortunately, we are seeing how weak this democracy is currently, and how it is easy to undo that democracy, to ensure that people are able to fight for their right to speak, fight for the right to be well and live in those societies. Um, Not to say, I mean, the view of the country is like somewhat, exaggerated, because we know what happens in this country, that many groups of people in this society do not have the same rights as the majority of the people. And many people of color, immigrants, do talk about how are you surprised, because we have been living this in this country for many, many decades, centuries, and even though we talk about democracy and equal rights, it does not exist for many of the groups. And currently, we're actually seeing how many more groups are marginalized and stripped from their rights that are guaranteed to them. And we have seen this how in our own campus And it feels like our own campus is the reflection of this authoritarian regimes that are taking power, where one person has the central power rather than shared power in the country. And that is very unfortunate when we see this happening in the place where we debate, we fight, we inquire, we ensure that we educate the future generations that will continue developing this country and fight for social and human rights, social, economic justice and human rights. Unfortunately, currently we're seeing few institutional protections working. We have almost non-existent pushback from Congress. We are seeing the judicial system is working in some cases, and we're seeing there are many people talking about constitutional crisis, and we are seeing power grab really by the executive power, which is like exactly coming from some of these guidebooks, playbooks of the autocratic and totalitarian regimes that we probably have heard, we studied, some of us have experienced. Um, um, and in any of the history of autocratic regimes, we know the universities are the first places to be attacked because these are the places that in fact are the place that develop the minds of the younger generations who then ensure that the society keeps moving and keeps being free. Um, Columbia University has seen attacks on many grounds. There has been cut to vital funding to continue groundbreaking research that is at the heart of new innovations, to address the pressing issues of humanity, but also has seen attack in how we teach and how we protect our students. In trying to protect this funding, Columbia University is making a mistake of working with administration that will want more and more concessions, and we unfortunately will not see any of the things that have been promised. And in the meantime, everything that made this place a great university and place students were proud to call home is disappearing. International students who are usually best of their countries, who bring so much knowledge, diversity, and value to this place are not safe. Since the students Mahmoud Khalil, Mohsen Mandawi were taken by ICE and DHS, I haven't seen a single international student who came to class in person since I started offering the remote option to join class, because I knew they didn't feel safe to be on campus. And I actually even know some students who didn't get out of the apartment since March because of how scared they are for themselves, for their loved ones, for the ability to actually finish the educations they came here for. Is this the university we want to be, where any who would, which student would in their right mind would want to come here, be scared, unsafe, and not being able to get the educations they came for? What about faculty and staff who may be in the same situations? Are we all spendable? Is nobody going to protect us? By bringing police and securitizing campus, that made it much more unsafe to many people who have been affected by police brutalities, including our own students who have been violated by police for peaceful protests. These are the gravest mistakes. We have heard a lot about how police keep us safe, and that is not true for many groups in our community. Our brave students have been risking their studies, their well-being, their livelihoods to call out the university's contribution to the violence in Palestine. The ask was very simple: divest from the companies that produce weapons of war, costing thousands of lives. How difficult is it to review and divest? Instead, Colombia decides to squash protests, bring police, and not protect them when they have been doxxed or targeted by immigration authorities, not for any crime, but for participation in making their voices heard. Classes have been space for open debates, are no longer feeling as such. There is such a division that is created by silencing of voices by the administration that classroom spaces are barely recognizable. If we continue that, what will differentiate us anymore from others? How can we graduate? How can we graduate students who provide the best with the best and quality educations, claiming that we are educating future leaders? What is the value of this very expensive Columbia education if we cannot provide the spaces? Um, Columbia can do much more to protect its community, students, staff, and faculty. Start by standing up for its students to allow open inquiry and not given to demands to undo the shared power of Columbia community members. More community voices should be listened and incorporated to the decision making at the top. Columbia needs to open emergency funding sources to support those who have been affected the most by the cuts, as well as by other punishments that university is handing out, and fight back through legal means. We have seen some of that working. If there is a pushback from all the fronts, there is less chance for others to give up. We can be the leaders in this movement as Harvard did or as our students did, so others find strength to join in, because other places, other universities do look up to Columbia University and other universities who lead this movement. This is a call to all community members. Please don't stand aside. If you do, you will soon find yourself being the one who is affected the most. And no one is protected when everyone saves themselves. And I have seen this in practice. And we have a much bigger chance of surviving and being proud of our university when we all come together. And unfortunately, we are not seeing this right now as a place where we can be proud of. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a couple more testimonies. Actually, I wanted to read from other colleagues who could not be here. One is coming from, this is working?
It is.
Okay, okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, so this one is coming from a colleague I respect a lot, who is adjunct faculty, senior lecturer at Columbia University. His name is Harry Schiffman. Since 2011, I have been teaching courses in social welfare policy and advocacy. Today, I speak to you because the work we do, the work social workers do, is under threat. This semester, my students and I have faced two devastating issues. First, we have witnessed relentless federal budget cuts, cuts that slash vital funding for the social service agencies where we work. Staffing cuts at federal agencies and freezes on desperately needed programs hurt the very clients who depend on us most, those who are poor, marginalized, and too often voiceless. Second, we have seen the attack on Columbia University itself. The freezing of federal funding is not abstract. It reaches into every corner of this campus, including the School of Social Work. One example, a brilliant student who had planned to join our PhD program to study the impact of incarceration on families was forced to walk away. The funding from the National Institute of Health, which would have supported this work, was frozen. That student and the important work they would have done is now elsewhere. When institutions face attacks like this, they have a choice: stand up or stand down. We have seen universities and law firms across the country stand up, filing lawsuits, resisting political pressure, refusing to betray their values. We call on Columbia Board of Trustees to do the same. We call on you to stand up to federal attacks on higher education, protect and defend our students and international scholars, preserve academic freedom and freedom of expression, safeguard Columbia autonomy to govern itself, reaffirm the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion, support and protect our researchers without compromise. Stand up, fight back. As a proud member of Columbia Jewish community, I want to be clear. We can and must fight anti-Semitism, but we must not allow the suppression of minority voices or erosion of free speech under the false guise of protection. I echo the powerful words of the Shema Toleno Coalition, recently published in the Columbia Spectator. Our coalition includes Zionists, anti-Zionists, diasporists, non-Zionists, and others. Among us are those who vocally champion Israel's right to defend itself and those who stood with our Palestinian classmates in protests and encampments to support their call for liberation. Despite our range of viewpoints, we stand united in our conviction that while combating anti-Semitism is an essential endeavor, persecuting minorities and suppressing free speech does not make Jewish students safer. Rather, it serves to increase fear both for ourselves and for our fellow students. These are not the only voices calling for justice, courage, and solidarity. The work we do at the School of Social Work matters. Teaching students from all backgrounds, religions, and nations about social work, social welfare history, and advocacy matters. Our clients, our communities, and our democracy depend on it. Now is the time for Columbia to stand for its students, stand for academic freedom, stand for justice, stand up, and fight back. Thank you. Thank you, Harry. I have one more testimony I would like to read, which comes from a student who also decided to remain anonymous to protect the loved ones and people she works with. Throughout the past academic year, my practicum has been with a resettlement agency working with refugee arrivals and support teams. This has been an incredible experience as I have had the opportunity to implement various policy projects related to capacity building, monitoring and evaluation, and program development. After Trump took office in January 2025, he signed a series of executive orders effectively dismantling refugee resettlement programs across the United States. Following the issuance of the executive order realigning the United States refugee admission program, refugee arrivals to the United States have been suspended until further notice. And I'm adding this, this is not her words, but U.S. has been a leader in refugee resettlement, and there are currently 122 million displaced people, and only 1% of them get resettled in closer to 25, 26 countries around the world. So 99% of them remain in limbo for years. And those who have been resettled, it takes them on average 10 to 15 years to get resettled. This has been, sorry, I lost the space. A few days later, on January 24, all 10 national resettlement agencies received a notice of suspension for all PRM awarded grants as a result of Trump's executive order on reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid. This suspension notice informs resettlement agencies to cease all PRM funded activities effective January 24, 2025, pending a department-wide review of foreign assistance programs. Earlier this month, the United Conference of Catholic Bishops, which is the largest national resettlement agency in federal government in the U.S., announced the heartbreaking decision that they will be terminating all cooperative agreements with the federal government. This means that all refugee support programs and services to unaccompanied minors that they hold will be closing down by the end of the fiscal year in September 2025. This news was shocking to many, as this organization has been partnering with the federal government since 1970s, which is when the first formal resettlement program began in the United States. Not only does this decision impact the staff working at the resettlement agency, but it also means that nearly 100 local affiliates funded by USCCB will lose funding to provide refugee services. After the election, I knew that there was a very real possibility that my practicum and refugee resettlement in general could look very different under the new administration. Since U.S. Department of State terminated the cooperative agreement for all 10 resettlement agencies at the end of February 25, there have been thousands of experienced staff members who have lost their jobs. The rhetoric surrounding both undocumented and documented immigrants is much cause for concern. Various policies harm even those who entered the United States under a legal pathway and who have gone through a vetting process that could take decades. It feels slightly surreal, and there is a large part of me that is grieving and that is angry, not only for myself or for friends who have suddenly lost their jobs, but also for the refugee families who are unable to reunite with loved ones, and also for the immigrant families who are no longer treated with any respect or dignity. And just to share you also, half of my class have lost, uh, well, maybe half, closer to half of the graduate social work students have lost placements, which means that probably they are not going to find the jobs in the tracks that they were planning to. So this past semester has been incredibly, well, I mean, this past 2 years have been incredibly difficult times to teach, especially social work. And this semester has been incredibly difficult because some of the things we teach in social work, I have been finding myself saying, well, it has worked in the past. I don't know what's going to look like in the next 4 years, because some of the things we teach no longer work in this day and time. So we need to do more for not only our profession, but all the people who we work with and all the people who cannot fight for themselves. And we need to do the hard job of fighting with them and for them. Thank you, everyone.
Roland, do you want to take over the emceeing responsibility? Okay. All right. Yeah. Come on up to the stage. We have a little podium. What do we say? I forgot. We are at the halftime mark. All right. I'm going to anoint you with the dongle. It's not a dongle, it's a lanyard. And give you the mic. Just remember, hold it right up to your mouth. Hold it like that, something like that.
Okay, thank you. So, welcome to those who have been listening for a while, and thanks to all of the previous speakers who spoke. I got to hear some of you speak. It was wonderful. I'm Michael Thaddeus, professor of mathematics. I'm representing the natural sciences for the next hour. But I brought in a lineup of speakers, quite a considerable number of speakers, actually, not all of whom are affiliated with the natural sciences, but most are. Graduate students and undergraduates, and I also have statements from some faculty. I was asked to reiterate the 6 principles or the 6 demands that CU-StandsUP Stand Up has enunciated and is asking all of us to advocate. Number 1, stand up for higher education. Number 2, fight back against the federal attacks. Number 3, protect and defend students and international scholars. Number 4, preserve academic freedom, freedom of expression, and Columbia's autonomy to govern them. Number 5, reestablish and affirm tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And finally, protect our researchers and provide backup funding. Thank you. these themes, the themes of this event, academic freedom, civil rights, student safety, and so on, they might not seem to have much to do with my own research field, which is mathematics. But on the other hand, I think about the words of Winston Smith in 1984, who says that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows. I'm not sure if I agree with those words or not, but it's at least a rhetorical connection between the freedom to think and speak about an abstract subject like mathematics and the very real issues that we're facing with civil rights and free expression in the real world. I told you there are a lot of speakers who I've signed up to speak in this hour, and quite a few of them are now here. So I think I want to start by just yielding the floor to them, starting with undergraduates from many different subjects. And with each of them, I will anoint you with this microphone that connects to the live stream, and then you hold this one, which is for the amplification, closely up to your mouth. So the first speaker is Roni, a Barnard student, and she's studying political science and mathematical science. So do you want to be on camera or off camera?
Hi, my name is Roni, and I am deeply passionate about the First Amendment. I come today speaking as someone who is in a constant state of learning about speech, surveillance, and privacy. I have met with many free speech scholars and lawyers and interned at several organizations focused on protecting civil liberties. Last summer, I wrote and pitched a bill that requires private universities to follow the same free speech law as public universities, and it is currently in the New York State Assembly. I say this to assert that the statements I bring forth today come from research and study, and though I am still a student who is learning about speech and free speech law, I do not take these definitions or conversations lightly, and I would like to use my time today to talk about mask bans and surveillance. I think that surveillance is generally known to be harmful, but it is maybe difficult to articulate exactly why, beyond the obvious disproportionate use of surveillance on marginalized communities. I want to begin by defining surveillance on a theoretical sense and articulating the harms that it creates. Professor David Lyon, reviewing the literature about surveillance, provides a strong overview of the topic. He defines surveillance as the focused, systemic, and routine attention to personal details for purposes of influence, management, protection, or direction. This is not arbitrary, and this is to assert control. Surveillance creates a distinct power dynamic between the watcher and the watched. The watched is under constant threat of consequence for their behavior. And when the person who is watching is setting the goalpost of what is allowed and what is not allowed, even otherwise permitted behavior is bound to be quashed. Law professor Neil Richards describes the idea of intellectual privacy, or the idea of being able to exercise one's freedom to think without state oversight or interference. One of the driving factors behind the value of free speech is the idea that people should be able to reason with different perspectives and come to decisions themselves. If people's ability to interact with dissident ideas is interrupted by the surveillance and manipulation, or even threat of manipulation, of a powerful watcher, then their ability to participate in our society and democracy as fully rational agents is hindered. It allows for the fomenting of authoritarianism. We cannot punish dissident thinking because we cannot punish one perspective without threatening all perspectives. It is no question that Columbia surveillance has significantly increased since protests began. In disciplinary hearings, people are confronted with images of themselves entering certain buildings and spaces involved with protests. Protest activity is a backbone of American democracy and should be protected rather than shut down. Of course, violent activity should face consequences, but the vague and intangible anticipation of violent activity is not reason enough to suppress speech. In fact, advocacy of illegal action is heavily protected by the First Amendment and has been since the 1969 case Brandenburg v. Ohio. Beyond the threat of campus disciplinary action, surveillance at Columbia brings the threat of doxing and destroying future careers and opportunities. Everyone in this community has seen the doxing trucks and is aware of Canary Mission. Constant surveillance and demonization of certain perspectives opens doors to people looking to punish speech on their own terms. Surveillance makes speech more dangerous. This brings me to mask bans. Until 2020, New York State had a mask ban, and it was repealed due to the pandemic. It was grounded in protest suppression. It was originally passed in the 1800s as a way to suppress rent riots. Since then, it has often been used to suppress protesters. It was used against theater troops staging public anti-war performances, bandana-wearing anarchists in Union Square on May Day, and protesters donning Guy Fawkes masks during Occupy Wall Street. It is a tool to expose protesters and make protesting a more dangerous activity. Colombia is banning masks that are used for the purpose of concealing one's identity in the commission of violations of university policies or state, municipal, or federal laws. They write that they are always allowed for religious or medical reasons. The use of intention in the institution of this policy is incredibly dangerous. How is a public safety officer to know why someone is wearing a mask? There are many reasons someone might wear a mask, even under the umbrella of health reasons. Not everyone is wearing a mask to protect their own health. Some might have someone close to them that they're looking to protect. Still others might just be preemptively wearing a mask before they travel or have an event coming up. Or just generally, in a world that is still reeling from a pandemic, it is absurd to require someone to have a personal medical reason in order to wear a mask. And beyond this, how is one meant to assert this reasoning? How do you prove that you have a medical reason for wearing a mask? Must you present records? Must you share personal, private information? Must we choose between privacy and safety? So when that public safety officer sees someone who is wearing a mask, they must make a guess as to their intention. Do they intend to break the law or university policy? Is that why they wear the mask? Opening this question up to the discretion of an officer fosters oppressive, discriminatory policing that targets those who are already most at risk in the criminal justice system. There's also the issue of what is a mask defined to be. Historically, New York's mask ban has been used as a tool to suppress gender expression. Trans women wearing makeup were seen as concealing their identity and were charged as violating the mask ban. Oops, sorry. Oh, thank you. Nassau County recently passed a mask ban. One of the first people charged under this new law was a man wearing a keffiyeh at a pro-Palestine protest. This keffiyeh he wore did not cover his face, but was rather worn as a scarf around his neck. Might a mask be defined as something that conceals one identity from facial recognition software or cameras? Could a wide-brimmed hat be a face covering? Large sunglasses? At what point must we submit to completely exposing ourselves to those who are watching us and dictating which speech of ours they like and dislike? We have a right to anonymous speech. In 1958, the Supreme Court unanimously held in NAACP v. Alabama that the government could not compel the NAACP to disclose the names and addresses of its members, as that behavior in the past has exposed those members to economic reprisal, loss of employment, threat of physical coercion, and other manifestations of public hostility. The court said that this disclosure was likely to affect adversely the ability of members to pursue their collective efforts to foster beliefs which they admittedly have the right to advocate, and that it may induce members to withdraw from the association and dissuade others from joining it because of fear of exposure of their beliefs shown through the consequences of this exposure. We have a right to anonymous speech because banning anonymous speech means chilling all speech. Universities are supposed to be a place where ideas flourish and thoughts are born and grown. Surveillance stops speech. Surveillance stops thought. We cannot be a fully functioning university if we are not allowed to think. Repeal the mask ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is another a recent graduate of the college who will take it from here. You need to put the lanyard around your neck so that speaks directly into the
Good evening. I'm going to speak a little bit about just things that I've sort of learned from my last 4 years at Columbia. It was tumultuous, but I like to think I learned something from my professors, so here goes. Most public commentary on Columbia over the past 2 years begins with a call to authority. These speakers tell their audience that they represent some version, maybe the authentic version, of their demographics experience on campus. As a Jewish student, I feel is a common refrain in these speeches. I know, because I've been such a speaker several times, many times. I've probably answered the question, what's it really like to be a Jewish student at Columbia, hundreds of times in the past year, in fact. In my time at Columbia, I answered that question from family members, journalists, professors, Columbia administrators even, each time benefiting from the asker's belief that I would give them the real scoop, that my perspective was the one true one, that I was a reliable narrator while the hundreds of students they'd asked before, heard from before, were unreliable, misled, maybe brainwashed. So now, let me let you in on the truth, the real truth, of what it has been like to be a Jewish student at Columbia for the past 4 years. What I'm about to tell you should guide how you make policy at this university, in fact. What I'm about to tell you, you should use to measure the truth of all other claims. Once I finish speaking, you will finally know who has been telling the truth and who has been exaggerating for political gain. You will know, based on just what I say, which students should have their visas revoked and sent to ICE detention facilities, and which should be allowed to graduate. This is it, the Holy Grail, what you've all been dying to know. Here we go. The truth is, it doesn't matter. What I say, what any one person says about protest or teaching or Israel or Palestine is on its own irrelevant to the function of a school or a university or, yes, a country. It is in isolation statistically insignificant, to use a math term. It is just one person's experience, one person's voice, an increasingly large stew of other voices and other experiences. That sea of voices is what guides strong democratic institutions. When they're effective, democratic institutions genuinely attempt to represent the sum total of everyone's experiences. They acknowledge that at a massive institution like Columbia, no one person's claimed experience, legitimate or fabricated, can ever approximate the size and diversity of such a place. Democracy acknowledges and acts on the apparent fact that no Jewish person can truly claim to speak for every other Jew. No faculty member for all other faculty members. No Palestinian person can speak for every other Palestinian. Democracy knows that no Zionist speaks for all Zionists, no anti-Zionist for all Zionists, and so on. It's a political theory that views the individual as one part of a larger collective, with no voice assigned greater power than its share. This brand of democracy must not begin and end with the government, and especially now when democratic ideals are under open assault by our federal government, when power is handed out to those who promise obedience to this federal government, we must ensure that the social institutions we are a part of are democratic. We must ensure that every large institution, public and private, makes decisions by listening to all of its constituents, not just the loudest ones. This brand of the privileging of individual voices over group consensus is what turns opinions expressed to friends at a casual dining hall lunch discussion into a means of policymaking. It is what entitles government officials to claim to portray an individual experience as not just one of many, but as fully representative of all others. It paves the way for authoritarianism. At Columbia, we've done things like that over and over during my time here. We have heard community members' trauma and pain, and instead of taking it as one chapter in a much larger story, we have selected the pain that fit our narratives. We've held them up as the real Jews, the real Palestinians, the real Israelis, the real Columbia students, the real professors, the real employees. And it's perfectly natural to do so. It makes sense to want to confirm our beliefs, to select the stories that align with what we know, and to discard the rest, to fear learning. And because it is so normal, we need democracy, real democracy, everywhere. From the White House to Low Library, to teachers' boards, to churches, to synagogues, to mosques, we must learn to create processes that take everyone into account. At Columbia, that means shared governance over how this institution works. It means academic freedom to write and research, and it means the right to protest no matter who it offends. Yes, for Palestinian liberation too. Only with these principles in hand can Columbia become an educational institution worthy of its formerly hallowed reputation. With strong shared governance, Columbia can once again become an institution that teaches students how to empathize, how to write, how to think for themselves. It can be the kind of school who does not arrest students like Mohsen Makdawi, students who possess the maturity to sit with people who fundamentally deny their identity and connect with them on a deeply human level. With shared governance, Columbia can be the kind of institution, a democratic institution, that has the strength of character to stare down threats from authoritarians in the White House who seek only to entrench their power over us all, and to protect its students and faculty who dare to challenge the foreign policy of such a government from being locked away in detention centers. An institution like that wouldn't be perfect, no. There would be times when it didn't produce results that everyone supported, but it would be an institution that was trusted. It would be one whose constituents believed that it had their best interests in mind. Because lived experience matters. It does. But believing only one person's lived experience, empowering it entirely over all others, is the lifeblood of authoritarianism. And as a Jewish graduate of Columbia, I'm terrified of that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Our next speaker is Leo Mocadias, who's a Columbia College sophomore majoring in environmental sciences. Step right up. You have to put this around your neck and then speak directly into the mic.
Great. I am Leo. I study environmental science. This is a natural science. It's a real science. So I'm going to talk about climate science. Specifically, Trump's attacks on climate science and how they're playing out at Columbia. One immediate blow that has not been reported on as it should be is NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, which is a world-renowned climate science lab housed right here at Columbia in Armstrong Hall, right near Tom's Diner. And scientists have led groundbreaking research on global warming and planetary atmospheres. Now, NASA is canceling its lease of that space effective May 31st. This lease was not due to expire until 2031. And yet politics has intervened. And I think many people think that this institute could be shut down altogether. More than 130 climate scientists and staff who work at NASA GISS are being forced out of their offices. And the institute's director, Dr. Gavin Schmidt, has been making his team switch to remote work while the NASA scrambles for a new home. An internal review warned that closing this office would, quote, cost much more than it saves and inflict, quote, massive damage to ongoing research with no real benefit to the government. Yet the closure is going ahead, disrupting experiments, collaborations, and mentorship. This is a direct hit to Columbia's climate research and a literal eviction of science from our campus. And yet Columbia's laboratories and institutes far beyond GISS are under strain from frozen grants. Even before the $400 million threat in March, the new administration targeted research funding more broadly when the NIH tried to slash indirect costs, funds for university research, which has gutted support for labs. Columbia's medical center, as we know, responded with an immediate hiring freeze. And although courts have temporarily paused that cut, the pattern is clear. From agriculture to climate programs, federal agencies have been ordered to put science on hold. The Department of Commerce suspended a $4 million climate resilience grant at Princeton starting this summer. And the OMB delivered a draft proposal to cut NASA's Earth Science budget by over 50% next year, a devastating blow to climate monitoring programs that many Columbia researchers rely on. The toll of these actions is not abstract, it is personal. At the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory up in Palisades, oceanographers and geochemists are unsure if their next federally funded expedition will launch. And I know, because I work for a geochemist, and who knows what will happen. At the Columbia Climate School, the first of its kind, faculty who have secured competitive grants to study climate solutions now see those funds in limbo and wonder if their teams will be dismantled. Young researchers, PhD students in the natural sciences, face uncertainty about the funding for their fellowships and experiments. Some have been told that equipment orders or fieldwork travel
that the removal of this institute from the building is not has not received more publicity in the press. This is obviously a prelude to an attempt by the federal government to shut it down entirely. So with that said, I'm happy to introduce the fourth of our 5 undergraduate speakers, Jacob Gold, who's a Columbia College student majoring in history and philosophy. So you know the drill now, right? Yes.
Forgot about the soapbox there. Thank you for coming out, everyone. I know it's very late. I want to thank Leal for inviting me to this, and Michael Thaddeus, who I just had the pleasure of meeting, for organizing this. I also want to thank the lovely organizers at this table beside me for staying here all day and all night to supervise this and keep it running. My name is Jacob, and I'm a student in the History and Philosophy departments. I know that this is supposed to be the natural sciences time, which is not what I do. So I thank them for their time, and I'll try to keep this quick. I want to start by stating for the record that I'm not some sort of radical protest organizer or an outside agitator. I'm a regular Columbia student who is worried about the future of my university. I want to speak tonight about a problem that's been on my mind recently, and that problem is how we think about universities. There are 2 ways we can think about what it means to be educated in a university. I call one of them the commodity style of thinking, and the other the community style. The question I want to pose is this. I'll start with the commodity style of thinking. When we think of education as a commodity, we think of it as happening through transactional relationships. The university is kind of like a storefront. Students pay a lot of money, and in exchange, they receive a credential and hopefully some knowledge. I hear this style of thinking in a lot of critiques of the university's handling of the protests. Why are there protesters on campus? Students are supposed to be there studying, not protesting. Is it fair to parents who are paying a lot of money that their kids' education is disrupted? It's private property. The university can and should remove anyone who is disruptive to the education. We also see this kind of thinking when we hear comments about mysterious outside agitators who are disrupting our campus. In the commodity style of thinking, a lot of these critiques make sense. If we think of the university as a kind of education store, protests of any kind do disrupt the flow of customers getting their education, paying, and leaving. Nobody who isn't a paying customer is welcome on the premises. Yet, I don't think this is how we should think of a university. Universities are not just transactional relationships. Education, a true education, is not something that our professors just beam into our heads in exchange for $85,000. The university is not a commodity vendor. It's a community. Rather than a storefront, the university is like a small town. Not only do we study here, but we live here, work here, and socialize here. This is all part of what it means to participate in an education. We don't become educated just by doing homework and attending class. We do it through being students and living in the university community. Likewise, our professors do more than merely dispense knowledge unto students or mechanically generate information for the public. They too participate in the university as a community. Education cannot be separated from those parts of being in a community that are separate from classes. They're all part of the same thing. Being allowed to critique our university, our government, and our society, whether through academic work or op-eds, without fear of retaliation, is part of the education. Occasional protests are part of the education. Learning about civil participation and thinking critically about the world around us is a crucial part of participating in our education. Living on an open campus, not one walled off with ID scanners from the rest of New York City, is part of the education. Our neighbors at CUNY and NYU and Fordham and in Morningside Heights and in Harlem are not outside agitators. They are members of our city and neighbors to our community. They too are part of our education. Under political pressures, we cannot lose sight of what education really means. I want to point out one more danger of commodity style thinking about universities. Using this analogy of the university as a storefront, critics of our university and the government change who counts as a legitimate customer and what counts as a legitimate product. The term outside agitator, which was once reserved for students from other schools, residents from other parts of the city, and former students of our university who were protesting on campus, has begun to include immigrant and international students. These students, who are undeniably part of our university community, are nonetheless starting to become categorized as outsiders who do not belong on our premises. And quite apart from using the commodity analogy to address disruption of the university dispensing its education, the education commodity itself has been declared faulty. We hear that universities are indoctrinating students into radical left ideologies. We hear that they're teaching students to hate America. Even if there aren't protests disrupting the university from dispensing education, we're told that the product it's selling is flawed and we have to regulate it more and more by controlling departments and their curriculums. Government not only seeks to ensure that instruction is dispensed without disruption, but also begins to dictate the specific kind of instruction that they approve of. They seize control of the Middle Eastern Studies Department and our admissions policies. At Harvard, they demand control of hiring practices for faculty. They slowly creep toward controlling what is taught, who teaches, and even who is admitted to our schools to learn it. Slowly, this analogy of the university as a storefront is modified to constrain our thought more and more. What is my point in all of this? It is that we must think of this university as a community, not a commodity. We cannot think only in terms of how much revenue we generate from the federal grants if it means sacrificing our community to keep them. Universities exist for more than just dispensing information to students. Universities exist to be the driving force of thought in our society. Universities are communities of the brightest minds, and right now, the dimmest minds are seeking to shut our universities up. They're trying to shut us up by revoking federal grant money, by attacking our accreditation agencies, by canceling our tax exemptions, by putting us under consent decrees, and by abducting students with federal agents. It is our duty not to shut up. It is our duty to stand together, because this is not an issue of innocent consumers being victimized by disruptive protesters. This is about freedom for our community. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'd like to introduce our fifth and last speaker, Daniel Schneider, a Columbia College student majoring in biological sciences. So, you know how it's done. This goes around your neck. You then speak directly into the microphone and stand on the box.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Schneider. I am an undergraduate in the Biological Sciences Department. I am so grateful to be here with all of you today who are showing up for science. I would like to elaborate on a point that has been made so fluently by my peers. I don't have a statement prepared, so I will not probably do such an eloquent job, but I'd like to add my voice to the mix and maybe clarify something that I've noticed in my research experience as a scientist at Columbia. I work at the Columbia Medical School uptown, and what I've noticed is that the administration, who we find ourselves so frequently at odds with, fully believes in the mission that we have come together to describe. They believe in how essential it is. They believe in the incredible impact that our research, our science, our ideas bring to Columbia. However, they are willing to use that as a cudgel. Research to the Columbia administration is little more than a cash cow. We bring in a tremendous amount of revenue through our grants, through our research, and through our work. And the administration, of course, recognizes this. It believes in the mission of science, in the impact that we do, to the degree that it affects its baseline. We find ourselves in the uncomfortable position of defending science to an administration who wants to see these grants restored and the flow of science to begin again at any cost. To the administration, no cost is high enough. So while I'm standing here amongst you, my fellow peers, scientists, faculty, the incredible community that we have here in natural sciences, I'd like to encourage a brief meditation about what is the role of science at Columbia. I see my fellow peers being told by the administration essentially to blame the protesters for the impacts that they see on science. That the protesters are responsible in whole for the loss of grants, cohorts, graduate programs. This is something that I hear professors at the medical school echo. So what do we do when we have a community who wants to protect science by eliminating some of the most core principles to the scientific method that there are? Science, like the university, has an important role both within the university and outside. It encourages us to challenge dogmas. It encourages us to be curious, to look for truth and objectivity. And science likes to think of itself as purely objective and as something apolitical. It is neither. Science and the university is to a degree a construct. We are able to have our free ideas, our ability to investigate only to the degree that we allow ourselves. We find ourselves in a scary moment where it becomes clear that the university has this multifaceted role. We've been described as an incubator of democracy. We've been described as one of the few arenas in which challenges of the government are allowed to proceed unfettered. This is not a given. Truth is malleable, as we are learning. I am studying to be an immunologist. I find the process of treating diseases as scary as cancer and the development of vaccines to be an incredible arena of discovery. I am taught that this is truth, that the progression of this research is something that should proceed at all costs. However, to the United States government, these principles become mere suggestions. We see the complete eradication of intellectualism, of credentialism, of science at the highest levels of our nation. This is what is truly threatening science. It's not disruptions to the commodity ecosystem, as my peers have so eloquently described. This is attack on civil society and free thought at all levels. Science is dangerous because it is a construct, because it encourages us to look for truth and to look for facts and logic when we might not otherwise. So it's simply not enough to defend science by talking about the impact and the grants and the programs that we have at Columbia. We have one of the most sophisticated programs in science in the entire world. But what does it matter if, in order to defend it, we lose some of our most core principles? Only today did the administration acknowledge the loss of two students, Mohsen Madawi and Mahmoud Khalil, by name. The administration is making its first steps away from the terms that the Trump administration has set. in which science is an apolitical commodity machine, if we wish to use that term, and that students are getting in the way. And the administration has taken them at their word. Students who, in essence, are acting like scientists, seekers of truth, seekers of equality, are being viewed as the enemy, rather than this anti-intellectual attack on civil society. So I'm so grateful for everyone who's come out here today in their role as a participant or a friend of Columbia Natural Sciences. And I believe while it is so important that we do everything to fix these grant freezes, to fix the loss of programming that we have seen, apologies, which of course will lead to a loss of lives as our medical program and research slows. It's not enough to demand the return of money. It ultimately comes down to us to also defend the core principles of our mission. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks to all of the speakers we've had so far. They were all wonderful. We're now going to switch gears a little bit. I think that's it for undergraduate speakers in this hour, and I'm now going to invite up to the podium a group of doctoral students from my own department of mathematics, and they will make their own statements and introduce themselves. Do you need to fix the mic? Oh, this one. Okay. They will make their own statements and introduce themselves, but then I will also read some anonymous statements from a few doctoral students in natural science. That's not for the live stream.
Is it good?
That's just for
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming here in the middle of the night, and thank you all around the world who are joining us remotely as we stand here in solidarity. We are some math PhD students who just had enough of this political board game. As much as we like probability problems about cards, we're not here to play cards. The US government wants to divide and conquer us at Columbia, weaponizing our different political views. But from the very beginning of this attack, we saw our community get closer and closer to each other. We chat each other, we help each other, and we share knowledge, advice, and information. But of course, tonight we're not here to thank the US government for their community service. Quite the contrary. Let us start by walking you through a day-to-day life experience of a math PhD, for you to see what will be lost if this anti-education campaign continues unobstructed. We save you a math lecture on our research, even if that would be a much more delightful topic for us. And we go straight to our service as instructors and teaching assistants. The math department has more or less 60 PhD students. Half of us are internationals. We all serve as instructors, which means that we all have to teach entry-level classes, which are a part of the curriculum of most of the students at Columbia.
But we